Draft Professor spreadsheet, the watch list, has been updated to Dale's promotion to the promoted players. So if you have access to the Draft Professor watch spreadsheet, all of the players that Dale is mentioning now have been updated on the sheet. By the time you listen to this podcast, that sheet's going to have all the right colors with the players and who evaluated them and all that good stuff.
Well, isn't that sheet up to like 1,000 players, which is incredible by you and all the Draft Professors?
So we have a list of 1,000 players that we're sorting through, and the promoted players list is up to 315. So that means that we have 315 players that Dale, Anthony, or some other draft professor has said, I've watched them. We're adding them to the list so others can watch them too. And this is how draft professors kind of like, I have to be able to decide who to add to the draft simulator. And this is also going to kind of govern a lot of the content that draft professors will have starting in September once college football season begins. Because we want to focus on the players that we've watched and liked so far. So that being said, this is the Draft Professors. We are doing summer scouting. I'm here with Dale from Bengals and Brews, and we are going to do some tight ends now. So Dale, we had a really good tight end class in 2025. What's your assessment of the 2026 tight end class?
Potential. It has potential, but it's a lot of unknown. And I mean, there's guys that I have pretty far down on my list that I've seen as people's tight end one. So I think it's going to be pick your flavor, and a lot of it's early. This is one of the positions I feel like is more projection for a lot of these guys than anything. Now there's some guys that produce, but there's a lot of guys that's like, okay, they've never taken the step that we keep thinking they're going to take. And one of the guys that's a big projection for me to talk about right off the bat is Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon. I think with Terrence Ferguson off to the NFL, who went in the top 50. A lot of people didn't think he would go in the top 50, but he did, and the talent was there. But Sadiq was still producing at a pretty solid level with him. And one game that I think, he only had 2 catches, and there's a lot of games that he only had a couple catches last year. But the game versus Penn State, that was a Big Ten championship game. He had 30 yards, 2 touchdowns on those 2 catches. And one of them's like a wheel route, and he just goes out, he hurdles the defender, and waltzes into the end zone. So that highlight alone, I'm sure you've all seen. But, go watch the game. Go watch a lot of him. But he is a big projection for me. But I really just like the flashes I've seen. I like the athleticism. I like the hands. I think he's going to have a huge, huge season for Oregon. So that's a big projection. A lot of people may not have him that high, but that's why he is a little higher on my list. Lawson Lucky, I don't know how many people have. They probably have Oscar Delp is the guy they're keeping a hold of from Georgia. But I think you've got to keep eyes on both of these players. Lucky actually outproduced him last year when everybody thought Delp was going to be that guy at Georgia at the tight end position. Massachusetts, he had 4 catches, 60 yards, and then 3 catches, 38 yards. That was the last 2 games of the regular season. So part of my projection for him is, playing his best football at the end of the year. And I think he can continue that at Georgia this season. And I expect him to vault his name up these boards quite a bit. Max Clare, first transfer on the tight end list. 3 players in, first transfer. It's usually first player, second player in, you've got to transfer. But tight end position, Max Clare, transferring from Purdue to Ohio State. This is a guy that had a ton of production. Purdue didn't have the best team in the world, and he was basically tight end 1 and wide receiver 1. He was their production for most of the season. The game versus Illinois is one I've watched, and I would suggest you guys go see if you want to see his talent and ability. 6 catches, 133 yards in that game. He's a great seam stretcher, really good run after the catch, good size. I mean, he's just a complete tight end, I think. Probably could perform better as a blocker because he's been asked to do so much as a receiver there. And maybe that's part of coming to Ohio State because he'll definitely get opportunities to improve as a blocker there. Oscar Delp, I mentioned the other guy from Georgia. He's got good hands. He's got good athleticism. I'm just waiting him to take that next step. Everyone thought this is Brock Bowers 2.0. He had under 300 receiving yards last year for Georgia. I know Carson Beck had a down season, but I expected more, and maybe this will be the year he breaks out. Jack Endry is a personal favorite of mine, and part of it's the story for him. So he's a former walk-on at California. This year, he's transferring to Texas. Well, Texas has a pretty good history with tight ends, so they know what they're seeing with this guy. But I just love the fact that a walk-on to a star player by a redshirt freshman. He was highly productive, and even just after the catch, he had 350 yards last year. Most tight ends would take 350 yards for a season. That was his after the catch. I think he had 700 yards last year, somewhere around that for California. So very good player. And if you want to check out a game from him, go watch him versus Pitt. He had 8 catches, 119 yards. A lot of that, he just knows how to find the soft spots in zones. He's a reliable weapon for his quarterback. He gets open. And once he gets the ball in his hands, he turns it upfield immediately. And I love that about a tight end. Eli Stowers, I thought he could have been a day 2 pick this year. Not the biggest guy at tight end. And go watch Alabama. You've probably seen Alabama game when Vanderbilt knocks them off. But he had 6 catches, 113 yards in that game. And he's, like I've mentioned, he's a little undersized, so maybe he's more of an H-back. He's your move tight end. The guy you're going to move around, but you're going to get the ball in his hands and let him make plays. And he did a lot of that for Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt last season. Joe Royer. So he transferred from Ohio State. I think he was there 3 or 4 years, and he never really played. He just didn't get much playing time. And he really broke out last year once he transferred to Cincinnati. A lot of people also thought he would come out. I think he had like 500 receiving yards. Don't know if that's correct off the top of my head, but quite a bit. And with that, he had 0 drops the whole season. So you talk about a reliable target, a good weapon, quarterback, tight end returning for Cincinnati. I expect him to pick up where he left off. And he's a pretty good blocker too. So the all-around tight end, I think Joe Royer could be one of those guys that people are like, oh, this is the guy I really like. So when you're watching Joe Royer, I definitely think a lot of people could be very high on him. Justin Jolly, good contested catch ability, route running, alignment versatility. I liked a lot about him. Luke Hawes, that's the one I kind of mentioned earlier. He's transferring to Ole Miss from Arkansas, but I've seen a lot of people have him as their tight end 1, and I was a little underwhelmed. He's a good route runner, but it's just like, I don't know. He's undersized. He just – I didn't love what I saw from him. But at Ole Miss, he should see a lot of targets. They throw the ball a lot. So maybe I'll fall in love in the fall. But right now, he's a little lower on my list than I thought he would be before I went in and watched him a little more. Jack Velling, he transferred to Michigan State from Oregon State last year. Had a solid season, but his touchdown production, I know, dropped from like 8 touchdowns down to 1. So that it's just, but he's a big target, and I expect that to jump back up. Very smooth route runner, just smooth movement, big bodied guy that I think will have a really good season for Michigan State. RJ Maryland, SMU, it really sucked that he got injured. His season ended early. SMU made a great run to the playoffs. I think had they had him in the playoffs, they probably would have performed a little better. Very good athlete, moves so well. They love just to get the ball in his hands. So RJ Maryland's a guy that I think could really bounce back this season and move up some boards. Tanner Koziel, 6'7", big target, reliable target. I think he's at Ball State, and then I think he went to Wisconsin. Now I think he transferred to Houston. And Wisconsin and Houston has all been in the same offseason, so that's always fascinating when that happens. And it does happen nowadays with the transfer portal. Daquan Wright is another tight end that I suggest watching. Really good size from Ole Miss. I think he's like 255. So this is a guy that can block. He can do stuff in the receiving game, but he's probably going to be more of like, hey, you block, Luke Halls, you go catch passes for Ole Miss this season, if I had to guess, as far as their 2 tight ends. John Michael Gillenborg. This is a kid out of Wyoming, very athletic. He moves more like a wide receiver, and he is undersized, so he almost has a little bit of wide receiver size. But for the tight end position, he just moves so well, and he makes tons of plays for Wyoming, and I'm excited to see what he can do this season. Sam Roush, physical runner after the catch, pretty good blocker out of Stanford. Brett Norfleet, a lot of people expect him to take a huge leap last year from Missouri because he showed some flashes the year before. Didn't quite happen, but he's 6'7", so he's a big target, contested catch ability, and really good straight line speed for a guy that size. Gabe Burkle, catch radius, football IQ out of Iowa State. Addison Ostrenga, you got to put an Iowa tight end on the list. So this is Iowa's tight end. Addison Ostrenga, really reliable hands, has a produced too much to this point, but he's shown some flashes, and just being an Iowa tight end, you've got to be on the draft list. Next guy, Jack Peterson, very physical, hasn't produced a ton at UCLA, but could be a breakout candidate this year. And then Riley Williams, Miami, Florida, similar situation. Miami, Florida has been behind some pretty good players that's come out the last couple of years, including Elijah Arroyo in this past draft. And I expect him to be their next guy. And he has very good speed, big playability. You know, he made some good plays this year, and I expect him to really take off and fill that Elijah Arroyo role in their offense and be highly productive. So that is my 20 tight end.